You probably think you know the story of Stephanie St. Clair, right? The legendary Queen of Harlem. But what if that whole legend, the one we all know, is only half the story? In this explainer, we're going to flip that script and look past the myth to really understand the woman who built an empire. Yeah, when you hear her name, that's the picture that pops into your head, isn't it? The incredible fur coats, the razor-sharp style, and just unapologetic power. This was the woman who ran Harlem's numbers game, and most famously stared down the mobster Dutch Schultz and told him to get lost. It's a story fit for a movie.
But let's ask a different kind of question. What if everything we see, the ruthlessness, the power, all that wealth, wasn't about ambition or greed at all? What if it was all a brilliant and, violent reaction to a lifetime of pain?
And that's really where we have to start. Because to understand the empire, you first have to understand the pain that it was built to keep out. This quote right here gets to the absolute heart of it. The Queen of Harlem wasn't created in New York. She was forged, practically burned into existence by a series of just brutal events that happened to a young girl long before she had any power at all. Okay, so how do we do it? How do we peel back all those layers of the Queenie legend to find the real person underneath? Well, it all starts by changing how we think about what drove her. Look at this, side by side. The myth is simple. She's a gangster queen driven by greed. But the reality? That's a whole different story. She is a survivor who became a master tactician. Her entire empire, her entire life, wasn't about getting more. It was built on one single idea: prevention, making damn sure no one could ever hurt her or control her again. So, what were these cruel lessons the world taught her? Because these weren't just bad memories she carried around. They became the actual blueprint for her entire future. And this concept right here is the key to unlocking her story: trauma as an operating system. It's the idea that your core instincts, your gut reactions, your decisions, they aren't just choices anymore. They've been programmed by what you've survived, hardwired into you to keep you alive, no matter what. And just look at this timeline. This wasn't one bad event. It was a relentless, nonstop gauntlet of trauma. At just 15, she was assaulted. Soon after, her mother dies, and she's totally alone in France, facing poverty and exploitation. Then comes the nightmare of Ellis Island, and finally, a horrific attack by the KKK. There was never a moment to breathe, no time to heal, only time to get harder. When you're under that kind of constant pressure, something has to change. For Stephanie, survival stopped being passive. It became an active and often violent strategy. And this was the moment everything changed. Soon after she got to Harlem, a man she was with, this guy named Duke, he made a fatal error in judgment. He tried to control her. He tried to exploit her in the exact same way she'd been exploited her entire life. And her response was immediate. It was brutal. She stabbed him in the eye with a fork. And this wasn't just a fight. This was a declaration. It was a message to the whole damn neighborhood. The victim is gone. The rules have changed because I'm the one writing them now. That one act basically hardwired her trauma into a new personal code, her new operating system. From then on, if someone violated her, they were eliminated. If a threat appeared, it was removed, proactively. Showing any weakness was just an open invitation for an attack. And her reputation for being fearsome, that wasn't about ego. That was her insurance policy. And she used this exact code to build her entire empire. It wasn't just a business, it was a fortress, designed from the ground up for one single purpose: protection. Every single famous move she made in business, you can trace it right back to a trauma response. She paid her people well because she knew what it felt like to be exploited. She took out ads in the paper to expose corrupt cops. That's neutralizing a threat before it can corner you. She testified against them in court because she would never be silenced again. She fought the mob tooth and nail because she would never be controlled again. And that cold, emotionless public mask, that was pure defense. Never, ever let them see a crack in the armor. You know, for any other gangster, that profit bar would be cranked all the way to the top. But look at her priorities. Protection is number one by a mile. Then comes community stability. Profit? Profit was way down the list. It was just a means to an end. It was the resource that paid for what she really wanted: safety and absolute control. And that's really what her whole operation became for so many people in Harlem. I mean, at a time when Black people were shut out of the entire legal economy, her numbers game wasn't just a hustle. It was a stable, parallel financial system. It was a sanctuary where you got paid, you were protected, and you had a place. So when you put all these pieces together, what do you really see? Her legacy gets completely redefined. It stops being a story about crime, and it becomes a story about power, pain, and above all, prevention. At the end of the day, she wasn't looking for a crown. The fur coats, the defiant attitude, all that power, it was all just armor. It was the high stone walls of a fortress she built to make sure that no one ever again could get inside and hurt her. And just think about this for a second. Today, we have all kinds of language for what she went through: PTSD, complex trauma, hypervigilance. But in her time, there were no words for it. No support groups, no therapy. The number of diagnoses she got, the number of people who could help her understand what was happening inside her own head, zero. She had to figure all of it out completely alone. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? She refused to keep bleeding, so she built walls, she called them rules, and then she made them the law of her world. She didn't just process her trauma, she weaponized it. And that leaves us with this final, really challenging question. Stephanie St. Clair's story forces us to look at that blurry line between being a criminal and being a survivor. When society offers you no justice, when the system itself is what's causing the pain, what does fighting back actually look like? Her life is one very complicated, very violent, and truly unforgettable answer.